Well, welcome to the Vero Beach City Council Candidate Forum sponsored by the Indian River Tea Party. I'd like to say a few thank yous before we get started. First off, thank you to the candidates for their willingness to serve and the time they are investing in running their campaigns. It is no small task. Thank you, candidates. I would like to thank all of the attendees here in the Performing Arts Center and those that are joining us by radio. Thank you for being with us tonight. I'd like to thank Treasure and Space Coast Radio, WTTB 1490, for carrying this live. And special thanks to the Indian River County School Board and the Vero Beach High School for allowing us the use of the facility. Also, before we get started, I'd like to point out a couple of upcoming Indian River Tea Party events. This Thursday, yes, 2 days from now, Jeff Atwater, your CFO for the state of Florida, will be in Indian River County at a luncheon held at Point West. I believe he will be advising us on the financial status of the state and the moves that have been made. So if you want to know what's going on financially at the state level, please be there this Thursday, 12 noon, $20, posted out at Point West. The next Tea Party event will be Saturday, November 12th, noon, again, that is a luncheon, that's a Saturday, and we're bringing in one of the Senate candidates, Colonel Mike McAllister will be there, so if you've heard the name, but you can't put a face with it, and you don't know what the gentleman stands for, please attend. It will be informative about Colonel McAllister's position, what he thinks, so it would be an informative lunch. That's November 12th. All right, to the forum. First off, I'm going to lay out the forum for tonight. We are going to start with the candidates introducing themselves. We're going to give them about 90 seconds each to tell us why they are qualified, why they're running, and why they should be the candidate of choice to handle the issues that face the city of Vero Beach in the upcoming years. Next, there will only be 3 questions from the moderator, yours truly, and you will have 90 seconds each to answer each question. And then we are going to allow each candidate the opportunity to ask any other candidate one question. So as we go through the evening, you need to be thinking about what you want to ask your fellow candidate. And then we will take questions from the audience. Okay? Now we have a timekeeper down front. Raise your hand, please, Darren. Okay. Now, being there's only 4 of you, and in the past we've had as many 9 or 11, and I've had to be very strict with you about your time. But we can be a little more lenient tonight. So she's going to put that up if your time is up, and I would like for you to try and bring it to a close. If you continue to go on, I will have to step in. But we have a little more time and more flexibility this evening. For the audience, there are note cards. All you have to do is raise your hand. There are ushers that will bring you the note card with a pen. You write your question down, hold it up, pass it out to the end of the aisle, hold it up, and they'll be collected and brought to me, and we'll be happy to ask your question. Chances are I probably will not be able to get to all the questions, but give it your best shot. All right. We have a few rules, as always, nothing new about this. First off, candidates, we would ask that you would adhere to the time frame, so try and be respectful. And most importantly, we would ask that you would answer the question asked. Okay? Now, I will most likely let you finish if I feel you are not answering the question, and then point that out. And if you continue to want to answer another question, we will move on, and I will point out that you've chosen to avoid the question. For the audience, the only rule for you is civility, okay? Keep in mind, they're up here putting themselves on the line, so I would hope that you would express your pleasure or displeasure at the ballot box, not in your responses to any answers, okay? Civility is the only rule for the audience. All right, shall we begin?
Yes.
Enough of those rules, huh? All right, now we're going to go in alphabetical order. Tracy will get the first question. All four will answer the question. We'll just follow in line. But then the next time we're going to start with Ken, and the next time we'll start with Brian. And Dick, you probably will be the first to get the question from the other candidate. All right. Question number one. Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Wendy. She saves me more than you know. All right. Start with introductions. Tracy, would you begin, please? 90 seconds.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tracy Carroll, and I'm currently a councilwoman elected last year for a one-year seat for the Vero Beach City Council. I believe the question that Toby had presented was, why am I qualified and what do I think the issues are? I'm qualified because I have been, I feel, the hardest working person on this council this year. Looking at issues not only about the utilities, which I could go into for much longer than 90 seconds right now, but I'll get to those, I'm sure, later this evening, but also representing the families and the businesses of our community, the families and the businesses that are struggling throughout our city as we deal with things like declining population and businesses moving out of the city. Our city has some tremendous struggles we're going through right now. Those encompass more than just the budget. They encompass what's happening with our families and our businesses. And those are the entities that I represent on this council.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am Ken Daige, a candidate for Vero Beach City Council. Thank you for inviting me to this forum as a venue for voters to get to know the candidates. I've been in the area resident since 1975. I am married to my wife, Deborah. I have raised 2 children in the local public schools. My son is married, and we have a very energetic, fun granddaughter. I am a local businessman, an active volunteer, and civic-minded. I'm also an Army veteran, 82nd Airborne. I am running for City Council because I believe Vero Beach residents are being disrespected. We have not been given all the information we need to know if we are getting a fair deal for our electric system. We have not heard the final report from the certified utility experts on the value of the system. Is the price right? We have not been told how long FPL intends to operate the power plant on the lagoon other than indefinitely. Local government is the truest form of the people by the people. Every year there's a city council election, and voters decide if they agree with the direction the city is going in. I will vote to sell the FPL if I am convinced it is a fair price and does not negatively impact city residents, customers, and our current city services. Thank you.
My name is Brian Heady, and I've never done this before. No, I'm serious. I've never done this before. I've run for election, but I've never run for re-election. So when you vote this time, don't vote on what I say. Vote on what I did. And what did I do during my 2 years? I voted consistently to limit government. I voted consistently for fiscally responsible budgets, or I voted no. And I voted against efforts by our government to compete with the private sector. Someone told me a couple weeks ago, you know, Brian, he says, you haven't changed one bit since you've been elected. And that's pretty typical. Everyone that gets elected, they always change. You haven't changed one bit. And I think he was beginning to chastise me for not changing one bit. And I told him that that's the best compliment anyone's told me. Anyone said, I haven't changed one bit. What you saw is what you got. And when you made a choice that you were ready for Heady, that's what you got. And I hope that you're ready for 2 more years.
Hi, I'm Dick Winger. I currently serve on the Finance Commission and have for a period of time. I've been studying the government quite closely. I really stand for 2 main issues. One, a fair price to the taxpayers for any assets that is sold, and I hope I get asked what a fair price is because I'm prepared to answer that. I'm in favor of selling electric, but only if we get a fair price, only if the taxpayer is rewarded for the investment my family has made here since 1971. The second thing I stand for is civility. I believe to have a useful forum, and I believe in consensus, you have to have civility. And so those are the things that I stand for. Talking about myself, I've been in big business for 49 years. I still have a job. I travel around the country. Of the 49 years, 28 years of them were in senior management with either Fortune 500 companies or companies of that size that were privately owned, and so therefore weren't Fortune 500. Thank you, Toby. I have a degree in theoretical economics and accounting. I have extensive business training in advanced training in management, crisis resolution, organization. As I said, I still work for European companies primarily. I think if you look at my webpage, you'll be edified in the kind of things I've done. There is a small sampling of turnarounds I've been involved in, 15. And one other thing, I've never used consultants. I was the consultant.
Thank you, candidates. WTTV asked us to make sure you speak into the mic for the benefit of those listening on the radio, please. All right, we ready for the first question? And Tracy, you'll field this first, okay? First again. Once again, the key issue facing the city of Vero Beach is the utility system and its possible sale to FPL. Currently, the city's customers are paying approximately a 20% premium, which is projected to rise to approximately 25% in early 2012. And it wasn't long ago it was even higher. Please advise if you are for or against the sale of the electrical utility system to FPL, and please support your position.
Shortly after the election last November, in December, the City Council placed me in the role as the liaison to negotiations as they take place with FPL. Since that time period, the dealings with FPL have been going on and have expanded. However, one thing that needs to be perfectly clear is that there is not the beginning yet of the contract negotiations. The City Council is progressing forward with assisting the FPL with doing their due diligence. They've not yet completed that. They have produced only a letter of intent to the City of Vero Beach. That letter of intent listed a number. The City Council chose to pull that out of our agreement of the letter of intent. There is currently no number on the table, no valuation, no number. Since that time period, FPL has been working very diligently on creating, at some point, a contract, a beginning contract. But in looking forward to that, the City of Vero Beach hired a transactional attorney to get up to speed, so at some point, the contract negotiations can begin. The goal of the City Council is to, at some point in the future, come to an agreed upon number, but simultaneously, we need to extricate ourselves from various contracts. Those have been being worked on. The OUC contract has already went out. We've also received 2 different companies that are looking at our FMPA entitlements. We've received those letters in the last few days. So we're progressing along the steps that we need to take. There is no way that this council or any council person that I could understand would ever agree to any type of contract until all the extrications of the contracts that we have with other entities take place. I am for the sale if we can find a final number that is a financial benefit to the City of Vero Beach and to the residents of the City of Vero Beach, who are the stakeholders in our electric utility.
Thank you, Tracy. Ken?
Thank you. I've been working as far as following the FPL negotiations for quite some time. I was on council when we were exiting FMPA. And when we worked that exit process through, we had to have another fuel provider, which is the Orlando Agreement. Once we hooked up with the Orlando folks, the cost to us went down. Then it came to being, as far as on the sale to FPL, they came in, they offered us a price. I've been watching that. There's numerous details that have to be answered concerning this sale. Vero Beach City has cooperated. I can't tell you how many hours and volumes of paperwork that they have submitted to FPL for them to do an analysis on our system. To date, I checked this afternoon, just a few hours ago, no information has come back to FPL on how they evaluated us and how they arose at the first figure that they submitted up to 100 million. Yes, I understand it's been taken out of the contract, but they're only going to be willing to pay so much because it's driven by the rates. They don't want to do a rider on there or an extra cost to the existing ratepayers if there's only so much that they're willing to pay. What I'm looking at is I want all the details on the table. This is extremely involved. And if we don't answer all the details, details equal money. The City of Vero Beach residents, the stakeholders, you will be on the hook for millions of dollars. This is being rushed along. We've had the City Finance Commission, Utilities Commission, which are all handpicked by the current council, raising their hand and saying, caution, you need to hold up and get some of these questions answered. I will have some more to say throughout the evening on this. Thank you.
Short
Thank you,
answer
Ken.
is yes.
Brian Heady.
I'm sorry, Brian Heady, the short answer is yes. I don't see a scenario where FP&L is not going to come into the city with a fair price, and I don't see a scenario where we are not going to be able to work out the entitlements, contracts, and the other details. I just don't see that as not happening. If we can effect this sale, it's a $20 to $25 million adrenaline shot in the arm of the economy in this community, and I see nothing that I could do as a city council member that can shoot $20 million into your wallets like the FP&L sale would do. There's been lots of comments that FP&L hasn't offered a fair price and we don't know how long they're going to operate the plant and lots of other questions. And, well, of course, those details aren't before us. There is a letter of intent, though, so we've got a pretty good idea of some of the things that they want to do. They want to take care of the underfunded pensions, the employees. We know the amount is, there was an amount at one point of $100 million. That amount's been removed until they come up with a final number. So we know that there's going to be a fair offer, and we know that they want to take care of some other details that were important to both the city and the employees. And I just cannot think of a better way to put $20 million back into your pockets.
Thank you, Brian. Dick Winger.
Well, yes, I want to sell the power company also, and I like to hear a fair price echoed by the other people because I'm the one that came up with that, and that's really the concern, to receive a fair price. There's two criteria. I'd be glad to talk about either one of them. One is a fair price that pays the taxpayers back for their investment. You know, you have a sizable investment between $10,000 and $20,000 for every person sitting in the audience, and every citizen, whether they can vote or not, every child in this utility, the electric company. You need to be paid back for that. My parents invested in that, many of your parents, and you invested in that. So that's one criteria, getting paid back the value that we own. You wouldn't sell stock in General Mills for less than its value in the New York Stock Exchange. The other one that concerns me really more than that one is the one that leaves the taxpayers financially solvent and allows us to maintain our city and our services. And the devil is in the detail. No one right now knows how to unwind. There are 9 contracts, major contracts. There are 31 minor contracts. And these contracts are very convoluted. I've read a great many of them, including the FMPA contract at Staunton number 2. Unfortunately, Staunton number 2, we put out an RFP, a request for proposal for the 2 steam plants. There's no response. The city, you taxpayers, will have to buy power until that contract is defeased, or you'll have to pay the consequences, and that's a lot of money, and we need to figure that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. All right, Ken, you'll field the second question first, please. The question is, the city is required to get approval from the voters through a referendum to allow it to lease the power plant property to a private interest, and such a referendum is currently planned. However, there has been discussions about a second referendum to approve the terms of the potential sale of the electrical utility system to FPL. Are you in favor of such a referendum, and why?
You're talking about 2 referendums, and the second one has been just very lightly discussed. And let me address the referendum that is on the ballot first, so you understand where I'm coming from. Based on the lack of information at this time, I cannot support a referendum. That's either one. The referendum asks voters to trust the elected officials' interpretation of beneficial. The lease would become commercial, and FPL stated at a city council meeting that they intended to operate the power plant indefinitely. The referendum does not follow the original intent of the charter, which was retention of the land as park land that the power and sewer plants, if they were removed. There is no data at this time to support a fair price for the electric system. A year ago, 2 years ago, a lot of folks were led in the community that if FPL took over the system, that the power plant would disappear within 2 to 5 years. That's not going to happen, and that came out in a few council meetings ago. A representative from FPL stated, we want to use the plant indefinitely. The FPL folks have been over that plant from top to bottom like a bunch of ants, checking everything, every little valve, every little corner. They have plans to repower it. Vero Beach electric system fills a hole in the grid. It's a very complicated situation, moving electric through the grid system. The plant is a very valuable asset. We were told about a year ago, the plant is worthless, scrap metal. Throw it into the lagoon, it's no good. Well, gee whiz, FPL doesn't think so. They want to use the site indefinitely. Indefinitely, folks, is a long time. I know a lot of my island side friends wanted the plants off the river. They didn't like looking at them any longer. Sorry, my friends, it's going to sit there for a long time. Also, when that thing runs and it's repowered, it's going to make a lot of noise. Right now, it does run as called upon. These are some of the things that you need to think about. These are some of the details that I would like laid out on the table. Again, we have no information, people. We have submitted all kinds of documentation. There's an election here coming up. There's a referendum on the ballot. I'd like more information before I vote on it. That's on both of them.
All right.
The one that's on there now and the one that could come later on down the road. Thanks.
All right. All right. Ken, I got to tell you, I didn't think you answered the question. The question was about the second referendum. And it's really a question is whether or not the city council should be making the decision about the contractual sale, the terms of it, or should that go back to the public? That's the question. Now, for the record, I want everybody to know that Ken read from his talking points to answer the first part of the question. We are not up here to read from your talking points, Ken. You are here to answer the question, please. The second referendum, are you in favor of it? If so, why? If not, why also?
Mr. Hill, first of all, I took a lot of time to prepare for this meeting. It's a very complicated subject. The answer that I just stated, I will stand by. I understand that you're not in agreement with the way I answered that. That's okay. I stand by my answer. Thank you.
Okay, the record shows you didn't answer the question. We don't know are you for or against a referendum to take the contract to the voters for approval, or do you want the city council to make the decision on the contract?
You keep asking a different way. I stand by my original answer that I gave. It's a complicated issue, folks, and we can do this all night if you want.
All right, well, that's the question. From my point of view, Ken, you didn't answer. Brian Heady,
Okay.
would you like me to repeat the question?
No, sir, I pretty well understand the question, and Toby, you stated the question with respect to the second referendum, and then in re-asking the question to Ken, should the city council make the decisions? Actually, that's what voters elect us to do, is to make those decisions. So I think it is within the scope of responsibility for the city council to make that decision. I think that whether or not I would be in favor of the second referendum would depend on the terms of the offer. If the terms of the offer in my mind were questionable, I might vote for a second referendum. Quite frankly, I don't see that happening. I see FP&L coming back with an offer. We hired consultants, we have valuations on the power plant. I don't see FP&L coming back with an offer that's less than those valuations, and I think that we're going to know from our constituents whether they're in favor of the sale simply by this election. There's clearly two candidates that favor the election. There's clearly two candidates that don't favor the sale of the power plant. And I think that when the voters put two incumbents back in that are in favor of the sale, I think that's going to send a very clear message. And at that point, I would not waste money on a second referendum.
All right, Dick Winger, do you need the question repeated, Dick?
No, I don't. And I kind of resent Mr. Heady saying I'm not in favor of the sale when I am in favor of the sale. I don't know where he comes off with that particular opinion. I would be in favor of the referendum for the reason that there's two values. One is the asset's been appraised at $184,900. The insurance value is $235, and the former manager of the utility said it was worth between $150 and $220. There's a long way from $100 million to $185 million. The second thing is the GI appraisal said for the city to come out whole and for us to continue things like police, things like Leisure Square and so on, we needed to get $160 million plus the cost of the penalties. We don't have any idea what the cost of the penalties will be, but the Orlando Public Utility is thought to be $26 million. Right now, we think that the Staunton contracts will cost at least $20 million, maybe much more than that. That's over $200 million. What you're faced with is you may not be able to continue the city as we know it. You may not be able to continue the services. Now, if we're going to cut the services back, if we're going to cut police back, if we're going to cut neighborhood watch back, I think before that happens, all of you have the right to have a voice in that particular decision. Also, there's the land. Ultimately, the land has to be decided upon by you, the voter. It cannot be decided by the city council. This particular first referendum all it does really is say the land can be leased. So what I will tell you, yes, I'm very much in favor of a real referendum with real facts in front of you, the real voter, and I wouldn't put that to city council. I think it's the entire future of the city that's at stake.
Okay, Dick, I have to admit I'm confused. All right, let me back
Go ahead,
up.
Toby, I'll try.
All right, thank you. All right, the first referendum is required by the city's charter. The city cannot lease the power plant property without the approval of the voters. That's why it requires a referendum. So you can't move forward with FPL unless they approve it. Okay, that's the first referendum I'm referring to, and there's one planned and it's in the works, okay? That has to happen. It appears it's going to happen, right? The second referendum has to do, there's been some conversation, so we were curious as everybody stood as whether or not you want to take it back to the voters for a yes or no vote on the sale of the plant, if it happens, utility system, not just the plant, utility system, if it happens, and the terms, so to speak, of the contract. So on that second one, in that point, are you for taking that back to the voters, or do you think it should stay with the city council members and they should review it and they should make the decision?
Thought I answered that, Toby. I said yes. The facts, once we have all the facts, they have to go to the public. Yes, 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 Toby. I don't know what's not clear about yes.
All right. Tracy?
Thank you, Toby, for giving a concise differentiation between the two referendums. Again, this referendum is required. Our charter that the City of Vero Beach residents voted on a number of years ago, we voted to put this into the charter, that the utilization of that property could not be changed unless the voters chose to do so through leasing the property or other methodology. That's what we have to do to go forward with the contract. Voting yes on the referendum allows us to go forward. We cannot structure any type of contract with a lease component unless we have the agreement of the voters. So that's why we're going forward now. The second referendum. If we chose to go with the second referendum, that is not going to be for a long period of time in the future. I don't believe that we will have all of the numbers together for some time period. It may be months, it may be a couple of years before we're able to extricate ourselves from these contracts. So the decision on that would be based on the finalization of all of these numbers at some point in the future. And I don't believe the decision can be made until we get all of the numbers together on whether a second referendum is necessary. For instance, we could come up with numbers that show an overwhelming financial benefit to the City of Vero Beach. And at that point, I believe the City Council could very well make a decision, hey, FP&L came up with such a great deal, this is a great deal for the customers, that we couldn't believe a single resident would refute those numbers. If the numbers and if the financial analysis came up with a very close, where we kind of stay in the status quo, which is something that this council does not want to do and we're not looking forward to doing. But if it came up with a close determination, this council has been given the responsibility to decide at that point, you know, we better take it to the people because this is close, this isn't overwhelming. So at that point, a second referendum may be needed. So unfortunately, Toby, my answer will be, we'll have to wait until we get all the numbers to make that decision.
Got it. All right, the third question, and Brian, you'll start. Tax revenues continue to decline. If elected, do you intend to address this issue by raising revenues or cutting spending? Please be specific, or please give specific examples how you will accomplish your plan, addressing such issues as increasing taxes, privatization of services, and city employee benefits, vacation, and sick leave. Brian?
Yeah, I voted against this budget because it doesn't address the declining revenues in a way that I think was sufficient. I spoke with the new city manager before he was here, explained to him some basic principles and some ways where I thought we could decrease the expenditures in the city. He didn't agree with those cuts, and he put before the city council a budget that pretty much is the same old stuff. We need to, and I've tried in the 2 years that I've been on, we need to address employee benefits. We need to address pensions. The taxpayers are left on the hook when the investments for pensions decrease, and we need to probably change pensions from a defined benefit to a defined contribution, where there's money that goes in for the employees, and that money needs to be in an account that's secure, that the city council cannot use to fund deficits. And that's exactly what we're doing in the current budget. That's why I voted against it. The current budget uses reserves to fund deficits. That's not the way to run an airline. We need to cut back on expenditures, and we need to use every tool that's available to us. And we need a city manager and a city management staff that's willing to listen to council members and air publicly the formulas and the ways of decreasing our expenditures, not increasing our tax burden.
Thank you, Brian. Dick Winger.
Well, I have a completely different answer, and I would because I come from business and I'm also an economist. And my answer is I've been working my way through the departments in the city, and I'm only part way through. But I see huge opportunity for increased revenue and huge opportunity to get something called productivity, which we in business really think is important. In other words, for each unit of labor that you put in, getting more out of it. I'll give you an example. GII did an optimization study of one of the funds, namely the water and sewer. And it came out that over a period of time, without revolutionary changes, without putting people in the street, except evolutionarily, we could have $2.5 to $3 million a year improved bottom line results by optimizing it with rather minimal capital investments. I'll give you another one. I was at the recreation department. I've been going through Leisure. I went through Leisure Square today. This city has got some wonderful recreational programs. I think they can be marketed better. I think we get more revenue out of them. I'm not sure that we are charging the right value for them. But I think we have some wonderful people and some wonderful assets, and I would want to build that. But you know, it's almost a $3 million department. We're only getting $700,000 revenue out of it. I think we can change those numbers materially. So because I'm a businessman, I think with $20.5 million revenue, I could help the city manager, give him some ideas. And I think we'd have to bring in experts, for instance, the police department. You'll never know what the right number of policemen is in politics, but there are people that know that. And I would want to have them take a look. Are we really running the police department the most efficient way? Maybe we are, but my experience is that we probably are not. So I have a very different approach. I don't think it's a question of raising taxes. I don't think it's a question of cutting services. I think it's a question of optimizing, and that's the kind of thing that I do and the kind of thing I bring. Thanks.
Thank you, Dick. Tracy?
I voiced significant concerns following the passage of the budget this year. However, we were in an extraordinary year with our retired finance director and a public works director crafting a budget. And then right in the middle of the process of budget approval, we had a new finance director and a new city manager step in. So responsibility for the budget was spread among 4 different individuals. And unfortunately, this council all defined some significant concerns with that budget. However, we had to move forward. We did achieve the rollback rate, so the average homeowner saw no change in the amount of taxes they paid this year. However, some of my significant concerns, I plan on going forward, and I've already met with the finance director on the fact that we can do amendments to the budget throughout the year. $250,000 in overtime in our budget. $90,000 in laundry and clothing expenses for our city employees. Some of those numbers were just simply appalling to me. Mr. Winger mentioned our optimization study. It showed that the laboratory we operated, the water and sewer department, is superfluous. It's not needed. We could do the laboratory testing cheaper if we went off-site, and yet we continue with employees there. I did an analysis today, and based on the census, we have 12,785 adults in our city of Vero Beach and 492 employees. That's 1 employee for every 26 residents. Those numbers are shocking to me. Smaller government is very important. when the finances and the taxes of the residents cannot continue to support the large government. I disagree with Mr. Winger that Parks and Recreation should show a profit. It's a service that the city provides for the taxpayer. The police are never going to show a profit. Public Works are never going to show a profit. The taxes of the residents have to continue to support those things, and those are vitally of importance to our residents.
Thank you, Tracy. All right. Everybody's fielded all three questions. We now move to the part where... Oh, excuse me. Just check and see if you're paying attention. Jan, go ahead.
Please. I have a pretty sign here. They should have seen me. Okay. On the question, I sat through the budget hearings. Here's what I'm looking for. The ad valorem tax rollback, however you want to phrase it, is a tax increase. The percentage has been increased. Also, the budget that the city's getting ready to go into is increased. Going out of the budget, there were increases on the budget that the city was operating on. I had asked what were the cost overruns. Still haven't gotten an answer. Also, your utility bills went up. I'm not in favor of that. Not in favor of raising the taxes. And not in favor when you raise the taxes or the tax rate, you increase your budget. Something's wrong. It's easy to say, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Well, exactly what are you going to do? Well, it's the city of Vero Beach. You have to change your business model, the way that you're operating. We had a council change out here last year. They went in, got rid of a lot of people. Okay, that's fine. Well, bring in people that you can rely on and let them do their jobs. I've sat through every council meeting. Staff would come in, they make suggestions. Council would say no. And I would say, okay, if you don't want those people's suggestions, why are they on the payroll? Get rid of them and get some other people in to do what you want. As city council, the group, there's 5 up there. If you bring something in, you have to make a discussion amongst the other members and make policy and get the job done. The last year, and again, I've sat through every meeting, and let me tell you, they're long. Very long. A lot of bickering, a lot of arguing, which is good when you first start out, because basically everybody there was new. Well, guess what? Now we're paying more money. We're paying more in the budget. It just doesn't add up with me. Also, I'm not in favor of any higher utility rates, even in the event we go with FPL. There's a lot of people in this community that are struggling and say, well, it's just a few dollars here, a few dollars there. Don't worry about it. Well, that impacts people that are struggling. That impacts the businesses out there when you raise a little bit here and a little bit there. Every dollar that comes into the household and businesses have to be accounted for. I'm a local business owner. I have to figure out how to make it work and deliver a quality service. The city of Vero Beach, the residents expect a very high level of service. You have Memorial Island, you have Riverside Park, you have the museum. They're all dollar leases. Who do you think maintains a lot of that property there? Who do you think makes Memorial Island real pretty for all the special services? Memorial Island, by the way, is one of the uniquest places in the country for veterans, where you can think about the men and women that have served this country and the men and women that are serving for us. We have a fantastic staff that works very, very hard. Again, it's been a long year for me sitting there, and I don't understand why they did the tax percentage increase and then raise the budget. It just doesn't add up, and raise the utility bill. When I was on council, I thought we had water and sewer increases, and I fought against those. In the event that voters put their trust back into me, I will fight again. No higher utility bills and no higher taxes. That's just where I stand on that. Thanks.
All right. So you were going on there, and was having a hard time on some of the issues. So you would not vote to increase taxes. I got that, Ken. Right. Now, privatization of services, I didn't hear you reference that. How do you feel about that?
I think that's something that we have to look into. Other cities are doing it, other counties are doing it. That's when I talked about our business model, that's part of it. That's something we have to look at. As a city, we don't have a choice going forward.
Thank you. Brian, how do you feel about that?
Privatization of services is, generally speaking, not something that I'm in favor of. I think that we need to run government efficiently. We need to cut the waste out, and I think that if we did that, that our services would be competitive with the private sector.
Dick, how do you feel about that?
Well, we put out, well, we didn't put out, but the city manager talks about putting out waste management outside and finding out it was actually more costly. And, I would certainly agree that over time we need to have fewer employees in the city. But it needs to be done evolutionarily. And as far as turning a department over, unless there's a big savings in putting people on the street in this economy, I can't be for it. I have too much empathy, I'm sorry.
Tracy?
It would have to be based on significant financial benefits to the city in addition to protection for some time period for the employees, similar to what FPNL is hopefully going to come forward with.
Okay. Now, I also referenced city employee benefits, vacations, sick leave, pensions. I would like for each one of you to answer that. Ken, you want to start?
On sick leave, you want that first?
Oh, it's all part of the benefit package.
All right, when you have employees come to any employment place, and that includes the city, they come, number one, for the wages, then everyone now looks at a benefit package. And to keep quality employees, you must have somewhat of a halfway decent benefit package. When we have people work for us, I think it's really up to a good employer to ensure a safe workplace. The employees can go to work hard, and feel comfortable where they have some type of sick benefit and some type of pension. Your better companies do it, and that's how they retain the better employees. We have to watch every nickel. We have to watch how it's paid for. And that's back to my plan about where we have to have a business model, a different model than what we're working off of now. Or how are these benefits going to be paid for? You have a sharing where employees put into the pot for their sick leave and their pensions. Then the city, we have to bring in more money. That's the part we have to look at. How are we going to raise that money? Is it going to be through higher taxes, which I'm against, or are we going to look at other revenue streams? We have to look at cutting things back, cutting back on employees and not hiring and filling the slots. I'm not in favor of putting everybody out in the street like a lot of folks want to, because then you have other repercussions from that. But my point I want to make here is you have to have folks that are sitting on that city council that understand how it works in city government and what can you actually do and get accomplished. Because you bring your plan and you're one of 5 to make a convincing argument of why some changes need to be made and put the proper policies in place to do that. That's one of the things that I did not see this last year. Thank you.
Okay. Is the current plan sustainable, Dick? Ken?
I think the current plan, as it stands now, and even when I was on council, it's not sustainable because it's just not working. We have to come up with a new way of doing business.
Okay.
When I was on there, we did start the pension reform, and it wasn't where we were going to gouge all the employees and take all the money out of their checks. That doesn't work either. You have to, and I'm for this, because I actually physically work. I can wear the suit and tie, but you have to be fair, and be fair to the people that work for you, and have a safe place to work.
Okay, and as the rest of you answer that question, please answer the second question. Is the current system sustainable? Brian?
Is it sustainable? No. There's nothing we can do, I don't think in legal terms, to take away benefits that employees have already earned. But from this day forward, we should cap those those accruals and not continue to bank more sick time, more vacation time. At the end of a year, if an employee is entitled to whatever, 10 sick days and they don't take any, there should be a small bonus given to them, but that ends those sick days, that you use them or lose them, the same way with vacation time. Vacation time is so that an employee can take a vacation. When they come back from vacation, they come back energized and their productivity goes up. It's a use it or lose it. And pensions need to be changed from a defined benefit to a defined contribution so that the taxpayers aren't on the hook for future declines in stock markets and pension investments.
Thank you, Brian. Dick?
No, I don't think they're sustainable, but I would point out to you a very key fact. I think we provoked about 70 additional employees joining unions, and I've dealt with unions in all my career, and unions are there are reasons for unions, and we have unions. And I don't think you can change any of these things without negotiating with the union. Now, they're not sustainable. I think the two unions would recognize that there has to be change, and that change has to occur over time. But the city council simply can't resolve that without more than one union negotiation, as a matter of fact. So no, it's not sustainable, and I think our friends in the union will go along with changes. They're going to have to happen. They're happening all through the economy. Who has a pension anymore? The world has changed. It's unfortunate, but it has.
Thank you, Dick. Tracy?
The current plans are simply unsustainable. This city council met with representatives of the union earlier this year, and we told them that we wanted to make changes. And their answer was, we'll think about it at the next 3-year contract renewal. That's a hard thing to listen to when we're hearing from the residents and we're hearing that we need to make changes, and yet we're told from the unions that we have to wait until the contract comes up again. They're not going to consider it. Unfortunately, they have things in the contract like triple time on holidays. That's not the way a small business is run. That's not the way I run my business. I personally don't feel that a city government employee should have benefits more or in excess of parity with the business community. But past councils have allowed what we have today. They've allowed these huge unfunded pensions, and they have allowed the continuing banking of employee sick time and vacation time. And unfortunately, that's the situation we're in right now. I have significant hopes that this council going forward can achieve the union contracts to make the changes that are required. Use it or lose it is what I do with my employees, and it's what I wish that the city could do with their employees as well, because we cannot financially go forward with a aging number of employees that are going to be soon retiring, and the city is on the hook for the many, many dollars for their benefits.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, now we're going to move to the section where each candidate gets to ask another candidate a question. And Dick, you want to go first?
Yeah, I was going to go to Mr. Heady, but I'll go to Tracy instead. And Tracy, when you said on the recreation, I know it'll never make money, but if we can lessen the spread between what it costs and what we get as far as income, that goes to the bottom line. So here's my question for you, Tracy. Back when the electric proposal first came out, it was $100 million. Now we find out that a fair value might be something like $185 million. We find out when the sewer came out from our friend in the back there, and he was talking $24 million. I said it was worth $73. He never refuted it. And now we find I was wrong. It's $100,900,000. For what it's worth, each of those transactions represents $7,500 each one, $15,000 per person. If we sold for too little. Now I'm not saying that we can get $185 million. I don't know what we'll be able to get. But Tracy, when all this came down, you seem to be very much in favor of the initial offers. Have you bought into a fair price?
The question is, I'm sorry, you started off on recreation. That didn't have anything to do with the question, did it?
All right, may I jump in here, please? Okay. This is not an opportunity to make a position again, so please refrain from that. Dick, I understood your question for Tracy to be, does she think a fair price has been tendered for the utility system? Is that correct?
No, my question is, does she buy into the concept that the taxpayers need to get a fair price? We don't know what a fair price on electric is.
All right, just ask the question, please.
Tracy, do you buy into the concept in both utility systems that we need to get a fair price once that's defined?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to elaborate? I'm
Should I
just
start
giving you
with
an
recreation?
opportunity if you would like to elaborate.
Yes, of course, the city deserves to get a fair price. There have been no contract offers from FP&L for our utility system. There have been no contract offers from the county on the water sewer system. Until a fair price was developed and all of the ramifications of contracts and other issues were developed, there is no way the council could determine whether that was a fair price. So yes, a fair price is necessary.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, Tracy, may I ask your question?
Sure. My question is to Mr. Daige. Mr. Daige, in the past, there have been questions on whether you were very much associated with the status quo city council, which has, I believe you went on record before and never answered the question on if you read the OUC contract. The status quo council simply rubber stamped that contract in the past. My question is to you. You have lost 2 elections for city council in the past. How can you convince voters that you are not part of the old guard or the status quo?
You got a couple things in that you threw in there with the Orlando agreement and the status quo. You're certainly entitled to your opinion. And the last 2 elections, the loss there, a lot of this, when you get into this process here, especially in this county, in this city, a lot of it is media driven. And we just could not compete with the over and over things that went out on the radio, the things that went out in the paper, the misinformation that went out in the paper. And so what I chose to do was stay around and stay at the city council meetings because I believed in what I was doing. And I knew a lot of the information that was going out on the radios and in the print media just wasn't factual. So eventually I kept bringing more and more of it into the city council, sharing it with them. Lots of times, again, they just didn't agree with it. They were of a certain mindset concerning FPL. Well, there were enough information has been put out to this community overall to show the city voters that there is more to this FPL sale, there's more details. And I actually got that on the table. This was being rushed awful quickly. There's a lot of hidden things behind this sale that a lot of people just don't know. This had started a number of years ago, and a lot of it was over the land. And the folks that wanted to develop the land, sorry, can't have it right now because number one, if FPL takes over the system, they're going to operate the plant indefinitely. So that's out right now. So I don't have the time to go into all the details tonight about this sale and about the things behind the scenes that a lot of you don't know. I'll tell the residents of this city, you need to pay attention of what's going on. Make sure you look at all the numbers. Because at the end of the day, the shareholders of this city, if it's not handled right and all the details are not answered, details equal money, you will be on the hook. And your city could fold, as you know. I live here. I work here. I really do care about this place. That's why I stayed at all these meetings. I've been part of city government for quite some time. Taken a lot of knocks. That's okay. Taken a lot of knocks in the press. That's okay. I had said one time at City Hall, you're not going to stop me from speaking out. You may not like what I have to say, but that's okay. There's a lot of other people that I made them aware of what's going on. Never said not to sell the FPL. Just wanted to make sure it's a good deal for the residents of our city. And also to deliver, if we happen to stay in the business of whatever, I was always fighting for all the ratepayers to deliver a service at a fair price. That's what it's all about. I'm not going to go away. It's as simple as that.
All right, Tracy, I'm going to defer to you. You asked a question, I'm not sure Ken asked it. You want to know, was he part of the old guard that gave us the redacted OUC contract?
That's what my question was.
That's what you wanted to know when we got Ken's position on the sale of the plant.
Right.
The system. Ken,
I
would
was-
you like to answer her question?
I was on council when that was going through. I got on as the process was rolling forward. And again, Mr. Hill is entitled to the way he wants to phrase this.
No, Ken, he's right, that's
Yeah,
what I meant.
that's okay. As far as, and Ms. Carroll, their opinions on the OUC agreement. I was on council at the time when this was a rolling on process. We had to exit FMPA, and that was a channel for us to go through. OUC happened to be the low bidder. FPL was one of the bidder. Even when you go back and you're looking through some of the paperwork and the documents of all this stuff that's been going on, FPL they said they were fine with the process. It was a fair process the way it was done. We had to go with another provider to get the bills down, and that was one way to do it. And the bills did come down. You look at the graphs and they went way down. Going forward, do we have more work to do? We most certainly do. In fact, we're the 5th lowest now in the state of Florida. Do we have more to do? Yes.
All right. Ken, it is now your turn to ask a question.
I'll ask an easy one. This is for Mr. Heady. The folks that did the study for the water and sewer and electric, the consulting firm, do you accept their findings thus far? Because I know you've been at the meetings with the Utilities Commission and Finance Commission.
Do I accept the findings? Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Brian, I'm going to give you an opportunity to elaborate if you would like. You don't have to, I just want to make sure you understand you have the opportunity.
Well, accept their findings. I mean, there's 342 pages in the electric. I mean, there's lots of facts in there that are absolutely accurate, and I understand the formulas that they use to come to the conclusions. Do I accept them? Yeah, I understand the math. I understand the formulas.
Thank you. All right, Brian, it is time for your question.
Clearly, I come at government from a different perspective than Mr. Winger, and when there's problems with budgets, I see cutting back on expenditures. Mr. Winger, you said earlier that you're a businessman and you see ways to increase revenues. My question is, why do you see budgetary problems in a way that requires new revenue, new taxes, rather than cuts in the budget?
Brian, that's certainly not for higher taxes of any form, and in fact, I would not have gone up to 204 as the city council did from 193, or 193.92, whatever it was. So I'm not there. And look, the city's got 451 employees in the water and sewer optimization. We're talking about over a period of 5 years or so, taking it down from 71 to 51 in water and sewer. The reality is the city can't sustain 451 employees, even if the business models that we have now exist. So we're going to have to do some cutting. But any place we can look at revenue or revenue streams to avoid cutting or to maintain services or even to improve services. When I talked about recreation, I think we've got some wonderful material there. I think we can offer it to more people, both as a service and possible source of revenue. It has to be studied, of course. So, I wouldn't be on the page to say that 451 employees will have a year from now. But at the same time, those employees' jobs are important, and it needs to be. I had once was given 300 employees in business, and I was only able to keep 52. It might bore you, but all but 8 we found jobs for, one place or another. And we did that in 120 days for what it's worth. So I'm always cognizant that in these times, putting people in the street is not something I want to do. Yeah, we got more people than we need at 451. We're going to have to do cutting back. I can't get away from that. So I kind of agree with you in that sense that there will have to be some cutbacks.
All right, now we're going to move to questions from the audience. All right, and Dick, we'll start with you. We'll let you field the first one. Some of the questions I have are to a specific candidate, and I will ask those. But some of them I would like all of you to answer. The first one I would like all of you to answer. And Dick, we would start with you, please. If the utility is not sold to FPL, then how will the pensions and electric be funded and rates held level? Electric rates held level.
That's a tough question, Toby. The reality is, whether it's Florida Power and Light or Vero Beach Electric or any muni, power bills are not going to be held level into the future. I mean, Florida Power and Light is facing atomic repowering. It's just not going to be. Repeat the second part of your question so that I get it.
Sure, no problem. I'm just going to read the whole question again. If the utility is not sold to FPL, and I trust they wrote it correctly, then how will the pensions be funded and electric rates held level?
Well, to answer the first part, electric rates will go up. They'll go up at both Florida Power, Light, and Vero Beach Electric. It is my opinion that there are businesses where there are economy of scale, and certainly electric is one of them. I'm a next era stockholder. I own stock in most of the utilities, electric utilities in the United States, for that matter, or at least the majority of them. And power bills are going to go up. I've lost the second part of your question, though. Go ahead.
There's only two parts. It's the pensions and how
Well,
they funded
you know,
electric
the
rates.
reality of it is we're funding the pension deficit is $53 million at the electric. It's a huge number, and it's being funded. It's being funded out of the revenue, and it's one of the causations for the problem we have. If we don't sell electric, and I'm in favor of selling electric, that problem will continue. I will tell you that 3 or 4 years out and into the future, what happens is Stanton 1 falls off, it becomes fully amortized, and some of our costs begin to go down into the future. Also, I think you have to look at other optimizations, but the reality is the pension is a real bad problem.
Thank you. Tracy?
Same question.
Yes, and I'm happy to repeat it if you
Yes,
need me
please.
to. Okay. If the utility is not sold to FPL, then how will the pensions be funded and electric rates held level?
First of all, I'll follow what he was saying in terms of the electric rates. The electric rates cannot stay level. The OUC contract that some of the council never read when it was passed has built-in escalators. It will continue to go up every single year, irregardless of the price of fuel. It will continue to go up. If fuel goes up, then the fuel price will go up and the escalators will kick in each year. So parity with FP&L will most likely never be realized. We'll never have the rates from FP&L. We'll never have the $20 million or more back into the pockets of the city and the county residents who are into or that are on our electrical system. The only way that then the pensions could be covered would either to decrease the expenses of the government, make a smaller government with less employees, cut services, or increase taxes. That's one of the 3 choices that this council will have to deal with.
Thank you, Tracy. Ken?
Okay, on your pensions for the electric side of the house. The electric side of the house, the monies that come into that side fund those pensions. So that's part of what they call cost of doing business with that. As far as rate stability, depending on who you talk to, whose opinion you get, some people feel the Orlando agreement's a good agreement. Others feel, especially the seated council, they don't like the agreement, they feel it's a bad agreement. We've had we've had a few people out in the community do their models, give their opinion. They're not certified in the fields of expertise that they represent, but they certainly are entitled to their opinions. You hear a number thrown around of 20 million. That's an opinion. There's been no certified study done on that, if that's actually the savings. What we have to look at here, folks, is that at the end of the day, if it's sold to FPL and the deal's not handled correctly, back to y'all being on the hook, because there's not enough money to run your city. Now, going forward, I can tell you this is what I do know from the humble research that I've been doing. If it's not sold to FPL, we can change the way that we're doing business. There's other ways we can change the business model that we're working on, and I don't have the time to go into all those details. They're numerous. PRMG did a study a number of years ago. They had recommended some changes to the way we do business. In fact, one of the ways the system got into trouble, if you go back and you look at our books, because I was always curious, had the money going in the top, had all this money coming in, you got this money going out, what'd you do with some of this other money? And a lot of it went to the undergrounding program, and the majority of the undergrounding program was done in the county. A lot of money came out to make that process happen. So going forward, I wanted to look to stop that program because it was in excess of over 100 million for undergrounding. And really, a lot of the undergrounding went in because a lot of the folks didn't want their trees trimmed. That's one of the reasons.
All right.
And the system...
I need you to wrap it up, Ken.
Okay, I'm sorry. The system paid for the undergrounding where the money could have went elsewhere. But going forward, we have to change the way we're doing business. If we're going to hold on to the system, we have, and I've always said this for as long as I've been involved with this, we have to be competitive with our neighbor, and that happens to be FPL. Thank you.
Okay. Brian?
What do we do if the system is not sold to FP&L? I think we're in trouble. It's just as simple as that. How would we fund pensions? We're not funding pensions now. Councilmember Turner has pointed out time and time again at meetings, it gets to be pretty redundant, and I still don't think that everyone gets it. I get it. The current funding is not adequate. The rates that we have right now are not adequate. So how can we hold the current rate? We can't. The reality is what we need to do is we need to increase the rate. We've already projected a 7% increase starting in January, and just one item for an example. I think the hurricanes cost us some $10 million, and I think there's $1 million currently in reserves for that item. We don't have enough in reserves. We've been spending our reserves to artificially keep the rates low because there is such a difference between us and FP&L. So what happens if we don't sell to FP&L? We're in trouble. And we're going to have to raise the rates. If we don't sell, we're going to have to raise the rates even more to pick up the underfunded pensions, to pick up the reserves that we don't have in case another hurricane comes through. We're in trouble if it doesn't get sold to FP&L. And I think that we all ought to say a prayer that FP&L comes back with a good offer and we do this deal.
Dick, you had your chance.
No, I want to correct something I said, just a number.
All right, you want to correct something you said?
Yes, something I said.
Briefly, please.
The unfunded pension is $11 million on electric. The debt on the debt that's on electric is $53 million, and I crossed those numbers a minute ago. Thank you, Toby.
Sir. All right, the next question is for all of you, and Dick, you started that one, right? So Tracy, you'll start this one. All right, this is a yes or no answer. Got it? Yes.
Got it.
Or no?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do you think City of Vero Beach utility customers living outside city limits should be allowed to vote on matters concerning the utilities?
Yes, I think they should. Unfortunately, they can't.
Ken?
Can I give a little explanation? Or just you want a yes and no? They can't, and the answer is no, it's unfortunate. They can't vote.
No, wait a minute, all right, let me read it to you again. Do you think they should? It didn't ask can they, it says does Ken Daige think they should be able to? That's the question.
Sure. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Brian Heady, no.
Dick Winger, no, they're not owners.
Okay. All right. Next question, and Tracy, you start down, right? So Ken starts this one?
I think so.
All right, you ready? If you insist on a sale price in excess of what FPL can afford, are you willing to let FPL walk away and condemn this community to annual losses of $20 million per year?
The 20 million again is back to an opinion, and we have to get a fair price. All the details have to answer, and if FPL wants to walk away, they walk away. And are you asking me, am I willing to let them do that? Is that your question?
Well,
Yeah.
the way I read it, it implies that if you don't cut the deal with FPL, based on the Faraday and Heron study, that it's $20 million a year that we're paying as a group beyond the current rates of FPL, okay? Are you willing to basically tell the taxpayers, you're gonna have to continue to do that for ad infinitum, forever, until the foreseeable future?
Number one, the way the model is done, I don't agree with it, so no, because it's an opinion, and I can't base my answer on an opinion.
Okay. I will point out that that model has been given up to the city, to anybody that wants to challenge it, and it has been a total open book, and nobody has challenged that model to try and prove it wrong. Brian?
The answer is no.
And I'm happy to repeat the question. Dick?
Go ahead, repeat it.
If you insist on a sale price in excess of what FPL can afford, are you willing to let FPL walk away and condemn this community to annual losses of $20 million per year?
Well, first of all, Toby, there are many other solutions to it other than selling all the systems of Florida Power and Light. And I come from the school. I'm not one of what you call old boys. I don't go to static yeses or nos. There are other inventive ways we could do. Can't talk about them here. But if it means we don't have a police force anymore, we can't afford our parks anymore, sure, I walk away all day long.
Tracy?
One thing we need to make perfectly clear, and that is that the $20 million number is not coming from the model. We have $100 million a year in electrical sales. If our price is 20% over FP&L, then that's the $20 million. That's the money that's going out of this community every year, which could be in our pockets if we had FP&L rates. That's simple. That doesn't have anything to do with the model. That $20 million is just what we're paying over what we would pay if FP&L, and everything else was equal. So let's get that on the table first. The second thing we need to have on the table is that we asked FP&L here. Can you imagine someone coming for dinner? And then you say, well, these are the rules and you can leave or stay for dinner? Come on, we asked them here. My answer to the question would be, if they came in low, how can we negotiate? That hasn't started yet. So I would agree to sit down and negotiate with them and see if they could give, if we could give, if somehow we could reach a decision that would benefit the city of Vero Beach and the city of Vero Beach residents.
All right, next question. Brian, you start. Over the past 4 years, the county had reduced staff by 206 full-time positions. Although I understand the population has increased substantially, I'm just reading this question. I'm not verifying the validity of that statement. This represents a 21.4% reduction in staffing from 2006-2007 levels. What measures are you putting in place to assure some of the same savings in smaller government and it applies to the city?
Well, I have not put any measures in that would reduce the staff. I think that if we do the FP&L deal, then that is going to reduce the staff. FP&L is going to pick up a tremendous number of the employees. That's one of the reasons why this FP&L deal is so important to the city, because we do need to reduce the staffing levels, and that's certainly one way of doing it.
Thank you. Dick?
Well, the staff is going to have to be smaller. It's a reality, and I've already answered the question 2 or 3 times. Is productivity. I would go through each department. I would have it studied by somebody that knows, not Dick Winger or somebody on the city council. I've suggested Jim O'Connor, and I would find ways to optimize, like the 71 to 51 in water and sewer. It clearly can be done, and it's going to have to be done. There's no choice.
Thank you, Dick. Tracy?
I received some numbers from the city manager last week, and you had mentioned 451 employees. We actually have 492 part-time and full-time employees in the city of Vero Beach right now. Unfortunately, less than 15% of our employees live in the city of Vero Beach, which I think is unfortunate, and less than 15% of the management and the supervisory staff of our employees live in the city of Vero Beach. There have been many concerns that if the county residents can't vote on the importance of a deal going forward with FP&L, most of our city employees can't vote either because they're not living in the city. Their vested interest is the protection of the city as it stands right now. What we ask them through in budget, what we ask the city managers or the city department heads, is to reset the paradigm. The paradigm of the big government in the past, and seeing how we could lower that in the future. And they rejected that. They didn't want to do that because every single department head came back to us and said, 5 years ago I had this many employees and some of them have retired over the years and now I have this, so I've cut. They didn't cut. This was the first year that department heads were forced to make a few cuts. You mentioned the county numbers, and the county has cut their employees because they had to, based on declining tax revenues. The city government in Vero Beach has only cut as attrition took place. If we need to, going forward, significant cuts may need to take place. If the deal is reached with FP&L, we hope that we will have cuts because we will have the electrical employees leaving. They've already been agreed to by FP&L in the letter of intent to take those employees on for 2 years and to take their pensions. That's great. There will also be cuts through the administration staff, through the general fund, of employees who spend their time on the electrical issues within our city. So we hope to modulate those income needs as well.
Everybody all right? You ready for a few more? Enthusiasm is infectious. Oh, excuse me.
Mic off too.
They don't want to hear from you. Go ahead, Ken.
Hey, thank you very much, Mr. Hill. And I stand to be corrected on one of my answers that I gave. I got it turned around in my head. I was asked about a vote here in the county, if county voters could vote on the electric system. My answer is no, and it is no. And I'm sorry for the misunderstanding that went on with me. It's a no. I got it turned around. And on the question that Mr. Hill just asked about staff, going forward, the city of Vero Beach, we do have to reduce. The answer is staff has to be reduced. If you go back and look at our books over the last number of years, we have been reducing staff. And there's a lot of positions we're just not filling any longer. Going forward, we have to make the reductions. We have no choice. And we have to make the reductions, and as long as we're utility providers, we have to have so many people at the plant, so many people at the water and sewer plant, so we only can cut those back so far. So we have to look at other areas where we can either retire the employees out, where we don't fill the positions, or we have to start letting folks go. And that I really don't want to do unless we have to. But we'll have to do what we have to do going forward as a city.
Thank you, Ken. All right. And so Brian started that question, I take it then, right? If Ken ended.
I ended.
All right. So this time we'll start with Dick. Other towns do not rely on utilities to balance their budgets. Why can't Vero Beach?
Good question.
That's a tough question, Toby. It really is. I mean, we've gotten it isn't just electric; it's also water and sewer. It's also some of the other funds. And we have had a tax rate of 193, and a third of the budget comes, more than a third of the budget when you take G&A comes from water and sewer and electric. The transfers in G&A. I will tell you one thing. This city, when you think about what's greater in here, in this area, it's the ocean, it's the lagoon, and it's the city of Vero Beach. And we provide a tremendous amount of services. In fact, 68% of the services of the city are provided to non-residents of the city. When you get to recreation, it pushes 80 for what it's worth. And part of it is we've gotten in the habit of having things like Riverside Park, Under the Oaks, renting land to the museum for $1, and on. Youth sailing, which I'm part of, as probably some of you know. And we do a lot of great things for the citizens, not just of the city, but of the county, and it's got to be funded somehow. And I, for one, don't want to change those things. I like the museum. I like Royal Palm Point. I like Main Street. I like, it was in question the other day, giving $35,000 or $25,000 to Main Street. And I'm a big supporter of Main Street in downtown and Old Town. And I don't know the solution to it, but what we're doing is we're funding lots of services that people seem to want, like neighborhood watch, on and on and on. And I don't really know the solution to it. I think it's a question that we have to get from the taxpayers ultimately.
Thank you, Dick. Tracy?
Would you mind reading the question again?
Certainly. Other towns do not rely on utilities to balance their budgets. Why can't Vero Beach?
In the city of Vero Beach, we have an artificially low tax rate. Everyone knows that. When we compare our tax rate to all the surrounding communities and through most of the communities throughout the state of Florida, our taxes are artificially low. That being said, every month when I write my check for my utility, I'm paying a tax. That tax is the 20% over what the FPL rates would be, and I'm paying that to the city. And that money is used to operate the engine we know as the city of Vero Beach right now. Unfortunately, when I fill out my taxes at the end of the year, I can't deduct that as a tax because it's a utility bill. With FP&L, if I could keep that 20% overage in my pocket, and if my taxes went up a small percentage, I could deduct that on my income tax. Personally, I would rather pay a small increase in taxes on my property and save the 20% every month for the 12 months. Because when I've looked at it for my personal one, and I've looked at it for a lot of people in this community as well, we took all different type of numbers, and that's the model. Because if we take what your electrical bill is, take 20% of that number and multiply it by 12. And then see how that compares to your taxes. I've taken a look at some of the taxes from the property taxes for some of the people sitting at this table. And some of them are paying $65 a year for their property taxes, and some of them are paying $2,000 a year for their property taxes. An increase in the property taxes of a small percentage, comparing to the savings that you would get throughout the entire year on the electrical rates, most residents are much better off. And the community is much better off with the funds that are going back in taxes to the school board and to the hospital district and to our community. So that's my answer.
Thank you, Tracy. Ken?
Thank you. On answering that question, again, as everybody has an opinion, as far as you hear that you can write certain things off on your taxes. There's a number of opinions out there in the community from accountants that I spoke to. Not everyone can write it off on their taxes. Folks that live within inside the city limits, I would ask you to do your own research on some of the problems that FPL has concerning their customers. They are going to do rate increases. There's going to be other riders on the bill. We know everything that's happening here in Vero Beach with our utilities because it's a public utility and it's open to all. Our enterprise funds, water and sewer and electric, they were set up many years ago to fund the city businesses, to fund monies for the roads, the parks, the leasing over there at Riverside, the museum. And it operated very well over the years. Monies have gotten tight, so that's why I kept saying we need to change the way we're doing business. We heard at FPL, basically, we even heard about praying to FPL as far as saving the community. It may not work like a lot of people think. And this is about the residents of Vero Beach. You have to really take a look at how this is going to affect you in the long run. Your city was set up with the enterprise funds to help keep the taxes down. We are the major hub in this county as far as commerce. Why do you think people come to this county? It's because of Vero Beach and what we have to offer. You get outside this community, you go to other communities, and you talk to other cities, other counties. We're the envy in a lot of places throughout the state of Florida. Over the years, this city has done very well at keeping itself up and funding itself. Yes, we got into problems with the electric, and the bills were too high. So prior councils before me, they knew that. They started working to exit FMPA. I can't go back and criticize and beat people up that made decisions. Maybe they were doing the best they could at the time. But you know what? When you go out there and look around your city, it's a real decent place to live. It's safe. You got good protection. You have the police when you need them. There's a lot of good services out in this community. Going forward, we have to look at a way to deliver that high level of service with less dollars. Thanks.
Brian?
Yeah, Brian Heady, the question was how do other cities do it when, how are we going to do it without the utility? Other cities have millage rates in the 4 neighborhood. We have millage rate in the 2 neighborhood. So our millage rate is half. The reason we have half the millage rate is because we've taken the tax to run the city and moved it over into the electric fund, where 60% of our customers are outside of the city, and they're helping to fund our city through their electric bills each and every single month. And that's how we do it. It's a smoke and mirrors that past councils have used to artificially keep the tax rate low because it was politically correct. And we need to put the taxes out there where you can see them and stop playing smoke and mirror games.
Dick?
I think I already answered that, Toby.
Good.
I mean, I'll answer it again if you like.
I have another question for you. But I guess we're going to start with Tracy. Do you agree that all ratepayers, not city taxpayers, have paid for the city utility?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Of course they have.
Absolutely. Toby,
Yes.
do I get to comment?
Go ahead.
Absolutely not. If you go to Publix, absolutely not. If you go to Publix and buy P's and D's, you don't own part of Publix. They're buying the service from us, and they're also using services around the city. I talked about them a while ago. Absolutely not. I mean, the utilities are owned by the people of Vero Beach. So, no, I don't think they pay for them any more than Florida Power and Light will make a return of 12% on the stockholder. Vero Beach makes a return of around 6% over the years, half as much as Florida Power and Light. Do the county residents get part of the half of the 12% that Florida Power and Light makes? I don't think so. I don't think so. That makes no business sense or logical sense whatsoever.
All right. One last question. And I guess we're back to starting with you, Tracy.
I have that first.
All right. Sorry.
Keep it in line there for me.
Thanks. If the contract does not go through with FPL, understanding that the Town of River Shores and the county have franchise agreements with the city, is the city at risk of losing those customers? And if so, what is the fallout?
Repeat the question.
If the contract with FPL does not go through, and understanding that the Town of Indian River Shores and Indian River County have franchise agreements with the city utility, is the city at risk of losing those customers? And if so, what is the fallout to the city?
Okay, thank you for repeating it. No, they're not at risk. There's other agreements they can put in to exit, but we have territorial agreements, and it's lengthy as far as the exiting process of Indian River County and Indian River Shores. The agreements are complicated, but they can't just exit on their own. So we would not, I guess, be at risk because they can't exit back on their own.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, Brian Heady, are we at risk? Of course. What would be the fallout? We're going to lose 60% of our income.
Dick?
Toby, are we talking about electric or water and sewer here?
Electric is the way I understand it.
We wouldn't, well, first of all, I have to remind you that Indian River Farms and South Beach came to us and asked us to give them power, water, and sewer when nobody else would, for what it's worth. And just lest we forget, we should have annexed the area at the time. But there's a very firm state law that says that a municipality's utility system cannot be overridden by either a county or a government, or a county or a business and taken away. Now let me go a step further. Frankly, I would encourage, and one of the best options to solve the whole issue and not have to pay the $20 or $50 million to OUC or the $20 or $30 million to FMPA is to partition the system. Let's sell everything outside the county on the island, the Florida Power and Light, let's let the rates go down, let's mothball or tear down the plant. Quite frankly, our rates would be lower than theirs, everybody will be happy, and so I would, there are other solutions, much better solutions. But to answer your question, could somebody just decide, could Florida Power and Light just decide to go in there? Not under Florida state law, you can't.
Tracy?
FPNL has stated emphatically that they are not interested in a partial sale. We invited them to the table and said, we'd like to see if you're interested in the whole package. They're progressing that way. They have spent an extensive amount of funds and time and employees and lawyers and due diligence throughout the time period from January until today, and that's still progressing. However, they've told us emphatically they're not interested in a partial sale. Will they in the future if we decide to just let the outside go? Who knows? Today, they're telling us they're not interested. So that should not be an option on the table. What concerns me is when the city has stated, the city staff has stated that we will hold hostage the customers throughout the South County and the shores to their territorial agreements. It concerns me that a city entity would hold hostage to the water and sewer agreements as well. And those are very big concerns of mine because they are our neighbors and they're our friends. And while as a city councilman, I must represent the city residents, I am concerned with holding hostage to our neighbors.
All right, that concludes our forum tonight. Let's give the candidates a round of applause. The Indian River Tea Party would like to thank you for attending or listening in. We remind you that votes have consequences. Please get out and vote, support the candidate of your choice, and you behaved rather well. Thank you.